What's that? It's time to calibrate again? Let's do it. This is episode 50. I'm Marc Levesque. Unfortunately, I'm flying solo today as Bob and Brent are indisposed. Don't you hate it when real life gets in the way of your hobbies?
Yes, always.
Yeah. Today, we are privileged to welcome Michael Friedberg as our guest. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
As I'm sure you know, we can't start a watch podcast without wrist checks. Since you're the guest of honor, what's on your wrist, Michael?
Well, two things are on my wrist because I have two wrists.
There you go.
The first is my latest acquisition, which is a Jaeger and Bensinger
Oh, wow.
watch with a new old stock FHF movement.
Very cool.
And, well, it's even cooler because my wife bought it for me in Prague from Beno Chopra, and as a birthday present, and so I'm thrilled with this watch. And it keeps excellent time. I spend a lot of time thinking about the fact that there's Guil Shea on it, because originally I liked only tool watches, but now I'm branching out.
There you go.
The second watch I have on my right list is also Guil Shea watch. It's one of the newer ones, came this year. It's from, I can never pronounce them, Venezianico.
Yeah, Venezianico, yeah.
Yep. In Venice, but it's a one-off.
Okay.
I wrote them and I said, when they did their in-house movement, I said, I love your watch, I just don't love the colors. And so they said, well, would you like us to do one just for you with an all silver dial, and all Guil Shea? And I couldn't say no, you know. Yeah. And so that's what's on my wrist today.
Very cool. Well, for me, last weekend was the Montreal Timepiece Show here in Canada.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to represent Isotope there at the show.
Good.
Across from my booth was Serica. So Serica is a French brand based in Paris. They make dive watches and other field type watches. They have their own twist. They're a little smaller than the traditional giant size dive watches and so forth, and they lean towards the vintage aesthetic, but their own twist. And one of their watches, the actual dive watch, the 5303, was the one that I've always admired. I always liked. I love the way they integrated the mesh bracelet with an actual link to make it a watch, which is really cool. It's 39 millimeters. This is the 5303-2, which is the white dial. No date. It has a Soprod M100 movement inside. It's running great. Chronometer certified and all that happy stuff. So, I'm working the show. I went there to actually work and wound up spending money instead.
Yes.
If Serica was put someplace else, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, it would have helped me. But, Jason is at fault. The organizer of the show. It's his fault that I spent this money. So if my wife asks, it's Jason's fault.
Okay.
Now, before we start with the questions, I've got a little bio on yourself. And for those who don't know who you are, this will help. So Michael Friedberg is one of the most respected figures in modern watch collecting and a true pioneer in the online watch community. Best known to many enthusiasts as Mr. IWC, Michael has spent more than 2 decades helping shape the conversation around horology through his work as a collector, writer, editor, moderator, and historian. A founding member of timezone.com, one of the internet's earliest and most influential watch forums, Michael served as a moderator of the site's first brand forum dedicated to IWC Schaffhausen. He later founded and moderated the IWC Collectors Forum for 15 years, creating a unique space where collectors, enthusiasts, and industry leaders could connect, share knowledge, and deepen their appreciation for the brand. In addition to his forum leadership, Michael spent 5 years as editor of the IWC Journal and has contributed extensively to documenting the history, culture, and evolution of IWC and watch collecting as a whole. Through decades of involvement in the hobby, he has witnessed and helped influence the transformation of watch enthusiasm from a niche community of collectors into a global phenomenon it is today. With unparalleled insight into the early days of online watch collecting, the development of enthusiasm in watches, and the history of IWC Schaffhausen, Michael remains one of the hobby's most knowledgeable and respected voices. Now, Michael joins a distinguished list of pioneers in the online watch community that have appeared on our show. So far, we've had William Messina, RJ Brower, Richard Page, Roland Murphy, and a bunch of others. We're so glad to have you. And I remember specifically one interaction we had. This is going back 20, 25 years maybe. You had just started the online community for IWC on the IWC website. I had written an IWC Aquatimer GST review. This is a review that one of my friends in Vancouver, Kyle, had taken pictures of, because back then not everybody had cell phones with cameras, right? This guy was into cameras and he had a digital camera, so he and I collaborated. He took pictures, I wrote the words, and another friend, I think it was Damon. Remember Damon from the Omega Forum on Time Zone?
I wish I know. I just don't, but that's
Yeah, he might have come a little bit afterwards, but he had the stainless steel version. I had the titanium, so we combined the whole thing, and we'd submitted on the IWC forum. And you sent me, or IWC sent me, I think it was through you, a mouse pad, an IWC mouse pad, which I think I still have somewhere. So that's how far back this all goes.
that's the original. The original promotional item was a mouse pad.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was very
So
nice. It was cool. It had I think it was a GST, a Deep One or something like that. The picture, and it had the IWC logo on it, and no, it was
it
really
was
really
a
cool.
GST, but I haven't looked at one in years.
Yeah, yeah. It's in a box somewhere.
Yeah,
It's like 2 houses ago.
yeah, yeah.
So let's get started with the questions. So how did watches first become a serious interest rather than simply an accessory for you?
Well, it probably started when I was 15 years old because my dad turned 40 and was very proud that he traded his Omega Constellation, of which he was proud, for a Rolex, a gold Rolex. And for him, it was a mark of great achievement. And I didn't know anything about watches back then. I wore a Timex. And but I was impressed that it meant something to him. And honestly, I don't think he knew that much about watches, but he at the time told me he thought that the importance of a watch was its finesse. And he liked thin watches because he viewed that as more of finesse in a watch making sense. And it always stuck with me, and until I got married in my mid-20s, and I bought a Tissot. And then from there, I saw an ad in the Wall Street Journal, and I bought an IWC chronograph, and a pilot's chronograph, and the first one. And from there, I bought a Jubilee anniversary one, and it just exploded. Far more than I would have ever thought. And at the same time, I became very interested in the internet. This was the late 80s and a little earlier, mid 80s, actually, when it started. And I thought that there was a huge opportunity for developing communities and doing things with the internet, and the use of the internet, not the technology as much, but the utility and the social value of the internet meant a huge amount to me. And I still feel it's not well understood today or appreciated as much as it could be from an academic perspective. But to me, the combination of horology, watch collecting, which is different, and the internet is a powerful thing for a lot of people. I'm not sure why psychologically, but that's a different story.
Oh, it's in there. The psychology of the community and sharing and finding one's peers, right?
Yes,
For so long, this was not the case. So the internet came around and we've realized that we're not alone here, and that, this obsession isn't just me.
it's crazy. It's crazy. I have dozens, hundreds of friends in other countries, that I would have never met
Yep.
but for the internet. And some, like Banu, when we were in Prague, it's the first time I actually met him in person. We had communicated when he was editor of Revolution magazine, but really, it's wonderful to have friends throughout the entire world with a common interest. And all these people, almost without exception, are bright people. Even when I disagree with their values or taste, which is fine because mine isn't so good either. But notwithstanding that,
No, if we all agreed on the same things, life would be pretty
well,
boring,
that's
wouldn't
the reation now we must have 300 watch brands.
it? There you go. More than that
Yeah,
now.
yeah. And when I started out, there were like 20. You know,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. We mentioned, or I mentioned the review that I wrote with my friend Kyle in Vancouver. He and I had been friends for going almost 30 years, and we had never met in person,
yeah,
like your friend in Prague. And last year, not this last Vancouver timepiece show, the one before that, I met him for the first time in person. And it was really nice to see him. And Roger Ruger in
yeah,
Germany, or he and I have been friends forever, and we're both fascinated with dive watches, and we've been sharing our knowledge and our appreciation for them for a long, long, long time, exchanging emails, DMs, and all that stuff, participating on the forums. And I still haven't met the person. I met Roger Brewer. I met him for the first time. RJ Brewer. I met him for the first time at the Toronto Timepiece Show in person last
yeah.
year.
I know.
It's pretty nuts.
Yeah, I was at an event. It wasn't a watch related event, and there was a guy in my business who I had known for 40 years, and I'd never met him until Tuesday night.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Actually,
please,
yeah. Speaking of common friends and people acquaintances, we interviewed Richard Page last summer,
yeah,
at the beginning of the summer, and then in July I was in Los Angeles at Minutes and Hours, another watch show, and he happened to walk up to the table with his daughter. He was in town visiting his family,
yeah.
and another person that we've known collectively for forever, and finally met him and shook his hand, and yeah, it was really nice to see him. And it's funny because we had just interviewed him too, so it was
I know Richard well, as you might imagine, but more than that, we stay in touch today.
yeah,
And we text each other from time to time. He asked me what was going on. Uh, uh, I don't know, a year ago, he found an old IWC catalog, and I collect ephemera,
sure.
and so he sent it to me, and so we do stay in touch today. I stay a little bit in touch with Walter Detz. I'm probably the only.
Yeah. Oh, really? I haven't heard that name in a long
Yeah, I
time.
know. That's why I mentioned it. Uh,
Sure.
Not as much in touch lately. I think he's having some health issues.
Oh, that's sad to hear.
Yeah, but and he's not interested in watches anymore. He's totally given it up, which
Really, huh?
is which
He
is
was a psychologist, wasn't
yes, and he just retired. Uh, I think he may have one or two remote patients left, and that's
he? Mm.
it, or at least that was the case 6 months ago. But yeah, no, I people throughout the entire world, I, I I saw somebody posting online a picture of some event in Hong Kong, and he was with Sean Lee. I don't know if you remember Sean,
It sounds
but
familiar.
yeah, but Sean's a great guy, and we've gone to Hong Kong, and we've had dinner with him and his wife, and just many good times. But I feel bad; I'm not there anymore. And
Mm.
there's times I feel like just hopping on a plane to go visit
Yeah.
these people again.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
yeah, so I've developed a lot of friends. It's a whole culture.
Yep. Agreed. Agreed. Now, before time zone existed, how did collectors actually learn about watches and connect with one another?
Poorly. Uh, the well, certainly there was writing
Yeah.
in books. Another good friend is Jeffrey Hess,
Yep.
who wrote Hess and Dowling's book on Rolex.
Yeah, he's a friend of mine as well. I've known him for a long, long, long time. I worked with him for when he was running ball.
Yeah, and 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 but when in the 1980s, a book like that was dog-eared by me and all of the pages. I went through everything, and I have a collection of books from the 70s and the 80s back then. And occasionally you'd run into people.
Yeah.
Uh, I would go to a pen show. I'm not really interested in pens, and there would be some guys there with watches that they were showing or selling, mostly U.S. ones
Hmm.
of nominal value by today's standards, but. So the answer, it was done poorly. It was done in writing. It was done in sporadic sort of shows. I believe in Germany and Switzerland, there were watch marts back in the 70s, because in the late 80s, early 90s, I used to go to a couple in Switzerland. And
That must have been fun.
yeah, there was a place called the Casino in Basel. They had every time they had the Basel Fair, they had and the Basel Fair, of course, put people together. I remember in like 1980, no, 19. I don't recall the precise date. 1989, 1990. I went to the Basel Fair, and with a small group of people from the internet, from Time Zone, and we all got together for the first time, and there was just like five of us there,
Yeah.
and we thought we just ruled the world, because
Yeah. I think William Messina may have talked about that
yeah,
that time that you
yeah,
went with you.
yeah, he was there for some of the events, not all,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and then the next year. So some guys from Europe said, we'd like to join you. And before I knew it, there was a room of 50 people, all of whom were strangers. And, and it just expanded geometrically.
Yeah. Yeah. So for younger collectors who grew up with the internet, it's hard to imagine.
Mm.
What did it actually feel like when you discovered there were other people out there who were just as obsessed with watches as you were?
Well, I loved it. We, particularly when I got involved with IWC, um, there were, I live in Chicago.
Uh-huh.
I travel a fair amount, so I'm not always here. But we used to get together for lunch, like at least once a month, a group of 4 or 5 of us, just casually. And this was unknown at the time,
Mhm.
and it was so much fun. And the people were all of them. Everyone was an interesting person. Uh, there was no there was no jealousies.
There's no
There
pretension.
was no yeah. There was no sniping, like, would you pay that for this sort of thing? And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and they were all interesting people, and they brought different things to the table in different ways. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it was like a whole world opened up.
Absolutely. So you were there during the earliest days of Time Zone. What was the atmosphere like in the pioneering days?
Well, it was a little bit of a Wild West thing, notwithstanding. First of all, I was not involved, but I was uh, a person on a visiting Time Zone before it was owned by Richard Page.
Yeah, when it was in Singapore, I think it was, or Malaysia, where
Yes,
was it?
yes, and then it was bombed,
Yeah, I remember that.
and and uh, and then uh, and it was there were a few. It was a little bit of a harsh environment too. I've been awfully complimentary, but I remember there were guys who were sniping in crazy ways. Why are you asking me this? Are you trying to buy it from me? And it just was strange. There was and some of the guys would sell uh, not just watches, but they'd sell guns, uh, knives, um,
Yeah.
which I always viewed from a psychological perspective as more of a need to reaffirm their masculinity. Not that that's necessarily bad. I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I'm a man. I want masculine things, and I like that. But they were different people, and there were it took a while to get things, and then there was a lot of yin yang between the commercialism of the watch industry and the pure collector, and frequently it conflicted with the watch companies. The Swiss industry is not known to be innovative, although it's doing much better. Yeah, and as a result, they were very suspicious of collectors discussing their watches. I remember some people were attacking Jaget Lecoultre online, and a vice president of the company got on to defend their position on something. And God darn, those guys attacked him. And they could have made the same point more politely, but the internet kind of loosens inhibitions, and with the certain anonymity of it all, they can say things that they wouldn't otherwise say. So the early days of the internet was a little bit like the Wild West, and that didn't mean that there was not progress and development, but
Yeah.
it required a series of levels.
Yeah.
And in the first level, I should say, by the way, and this is the one plug I will make, is IWC was the first company to come out with a collectors forum. It was the first company to sponsor a collectors group on the internet.
Yeah, and embrace the community.
Yeah, and I remember talking to Michael Sarp, who was president then, before George Kern, and he said, Michael, I want you to be honest and be polite, but critical if you need to be. We're nowhere as a discussion forum if we're just Me Too sort of people. And I think that the only way you will have authenticity and believability is if you're critical as well as positive. And I thought that was kind of an enlightened view.
Absolutely, especially back then. That was very progressive.
Yeah, well, you can see he didn't last that long.
Mhm. Could you explain what role as a moderator involved, and what about the role kept you involved for so many years?
Well, the first thing is, well, there is no definition, and so a lot is what you make of it. And what you make of it depends in turn upon the company and the people who are working in the area that you are. And when they hired me, the woman in charge of marketing was the woman Jacqueline Rosa. Rose in English, but it's 2 syllables in German. And she was a very young feminist who was extremely bright, and she understood what I was trying to do, and she was completely supportive. And so if I wanted to do something, I just kind of did it and told her. And in fact, at one point I said, you know what, we got to bring this from the internet, from virtual reality to real reality. And I said, I wanted to set up a collectors meeting in Schaffhausen. Well, that worked out just great. This is 2001, I think it was, either that and or 2002 latest. And again, it was the first meeting of collectors in an organized sense by any watch company. And I was given the latitude to do it because everything I had done, what I said I would do, I did. And on the whole, they liked it.
Yeah.
There's a couple instances where I went to Jacqueline and said, I'd like to have a contest for the ugliest IWC watch. And she said, what? and I said, well, wait a moment. It's not like you think. And we picked historical models, particularly women's models that weren't well jeweled or something.
Yeah.
And she was tolerant of that. And at the time, the most, I won't say difficult person because I've always gotten along with him really well, was George Kern. But George was very adverse to strident criticism on the internet.
Mm,
And in fact, that's one reason the German language forum ultimately ended.
yeah.
Um, so there was always this yin yang between the business and the collectors and the ultimate product. And but again, to me, that was just a fascinating thing. It's part. It's more layers.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. How different was the collector community when there were only perhaps a few thousand serious enthusiasts worldwide communicating online?
Well, the ones that came are ones that, on the whole, are the old timers and still were around. Uh, Unfortunately,
Mm,
since it's been 25 years, some of them are no longer here on this earth. Uh, but
yeah.
I remember at the first dinner, uh, even though I was sitting at a table with my wife, uh, I purposely I viewed myself as kind of the guy who had to get up and walk around and sit down and talk to people. Yeah, I didn't have to do that, but I viewed that as my job.
Yeah.
By the way, they paid me for my job, but they didn't describe it at the time. Uh, and
Mm,
so I sat down next to a guy by the name of Adrian Vandermegen from Belgium. He's a retired urologist.
okay.
But what a bright guy. And he has really studied pocket watches. IWC developed quite a collection. We used to communicate. And even though I haven't talked to him in 6 months or a year, uh, 25 years later, we're still in touch just because of that. And there were a lot of Adrians there, people who were really smart. I met a guy who's not on the internet. I haven't seen him in years. Ralph Arisman from Switzerland. He is probably the expert on mid range of this Elgin IWC pocket watches from the 1880s and 90s. And, you don't find people like that walking down the street in Chicago. And even though I had no interest at the time in pocket watches, I learned so much from him, and he was such a good guy. And it's that way. So when you say how was it, the answer was a little more intimate, little bit more one-on-one.
Yeah.
But these were people with deep, abiding beliefs in the value of fine watchmaking.
Yeah. I remember back then the people who participated, right? Because we had thousands of people coming to the forums every day.
Yeah.
There was only a handful of people that kept on participating. You you would visit and you would learn. And you'd probably comment, good post, whatever, but the people who participated had deep, deep, deep knowledge of what they were talking about.
That's really interesting too, because up to this minute in time, I've never disclosed any of the statistics on the forum. But
Well, go for it.
but I received them,
Yeah,
and interestingly enough, I would say in the first early years, we had 10 to 20,000 people sign up,
okay.
of which 1,000 to maybe 2,000 were active in any way.
Yeah, yeah,
And from that, we kept distilling till there was like 100 really active, and then there was 20 or 30 active. I took those numbers and used them as a criteria for invitations to events in Europe. That even though they didn't pay for the airfare, they sometimes paid for the hotel, not always. But regardless, we wanted to keep promoting the forum, and we wanted it to grow. This is good. This was marketing, and it was commercial, but it didn't bother me at all because to me, the growth is good for horology and the collector's world. I can't see a deficit to good, solid growth. Uh, uh, and we use the statistics of participation to determine how to invite people.
That's smart.
And frequently, and frequently we would say things. We never had a point system saying, if you get invited, do you think you might have time to write a little review of the new models or something? And there would be some guys who would say yes, and a few would say no, but we didn't automatically blackball somebody if they couldn't do 100%, but we wanted to encourage participation. So even though there was this distilled group, we kept growing. And by the time I left the forum, there was, way more than 100,000 active collectors. One of the reasons for that was also I had a very strong view, which IWC bought for a long time, to release 2 days or a week early the new models for the year before anyone else. Sometimes with legends.
Yeah.
Because if there's any way to draw audience, frankly, it wasn't my personality as a moderator. It was much more.
Well, you had a great
Well,
personality online, very welcoming.
there was some people who thought I was too strident or dictatorial. uh, uh,
Mm.
just because I would have, fairly strong views, like saying, you want to participate in the collectors meeting, then show yourself on the forum. Some people would say, who in the hell are you to say that? And but
You gotta earn it.
yeah, but notwithstanding that, it's just a lot of good people, and we kept trying to make the iceberg larger, even if we're only seeing the tip of it. And I think we succeeded. I think for a long time, in fact, I also had the statistics for a short time on time zone. The IWC forum on time zone, which for a while was exceeding the number of hits than the Rolex forum. And that wasn't because their product is necessarily better than Rolex, although we can debate that all day. It was because of the marketing.
The marketing, I also think that, moderation and the way people feel when they come to a forum makes a big difference. And I think that when they came to the IWC forum, the knowledge was there. If you participated, you were encouraged, you nurtured people, you helped them
Yes.
participate. And I think that's what made the IWC forum special.
Yes, thank you, because there was a lot of guys that I wrote to. There was one fellow, for example, he's passed away, Argyris.
Mhm.
You may recall him. He lived in northern Greece. He didn't know that much about watches, but he wrote me. And it was a very nice thing where he sent a picture of himself and his girlfriend, subsequently his wife, uh, in Macedonia somewhere on the shore. And I basically said to him, stick with me, and every couple of weeks I'll send you something and we'll get you going and we'll teach you. And I won't take the credit because people learn in multiple ways, but I will say there were several Argyrises that I quote unquote adopted enough. And it's one, because I like them as people. Two, they reached out, which is nice. And the third reason is they were interested in something that I was interested in. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Shared passion. Did you realize at the time that online forums would permanently change watch collecting?
that's a difficult question because I would like to say yes. And at some point, I realized it. But I'm not sure I realized it initially. And also, I'm not sure I appreciate all the changes that are occurring now. I'm not being critical, but I view it as almost like those little kids' spring toys that you have in a can, and you open the can and they spring up. Uh, for example, here I am wearing two independent watches that didn't exist 10 years ago. Well, and, and, and it's a new world today. And it was far more than I ever imagined.
Yeah, for sure. It is not what it used to be, that is for sure. Um, which was there a moment when you realized the hobby had reached a tipping point and it was no longer a niche interest, but something much larger?
I, I, I'm not sure about that. I wish I could say things one way or the other. Um, but the problem was, even in the early days, there were a lot of people who bought one Rolex watch, often a Submariner back then. They knew nothing about the history of Rolex. They knew nothing about Submariner, but they thought it was a very cool watch. And it is. Uh, so, but what I'm saying is that uh, there were people back then who weren't sophisticated collectors who got involved, and I think we have more and more of those today. When I was involved in the '90s, no, more in the 2000 or the first 10 years of this decade excuse me, of the century, there was just a totally different approach to watches than today. There was much more interest in mechanics than there are today.
Yeah.
Uh, and, uh, you know, there was more discussion about free sprung balances then
Yeah.
than today. And people are, and both of these watches here have, interestingly enough, free sprung balances, but people like it because of their dials. And there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
You can like your spouse for many different reasons, and the same is true for watches.
Thankfully, if you're like me, you don't go with your spouses as often as you go through watches.
No, I'd be in the slave trade.
Same here.
Yeah.
So, what was the biggest misconception collectors had in the '90s and early 2000s, you think?
Well, I think there was a true dichotomy between two groups. One is the sports watch kind of look. And this was, the Royal Oak was out, the Nautilus was out, Rolex was selling like hotcakes. But nevertheless, there was a whole group of people who viewed their watch as an instrument. And the second group of people viewed their watch as either a work of art or at least something fine for dress, like jewelry. I mean, in a sense, one can draw parallels, but to me, there's something diametrically opposed to Rolex in the 1990s and Patek in the 1990s. And so there was almost these two schools combined. And interestingly enough, there's been a synthesis today. Uh, Up to a point. And, Patek makes some sports watches, or at least has ones that look like sports watches with rubber straps.
As I was gonna say, sport-looking watches.
I remember seeing Tour de France in the 1980s, and Greg LeMond, who was the big hero then, he was wearing a Cartier on the tour. Now, I was thinking, how stupid. All you need is one good crash. And
Yeah.
of course, if you're Greg LeMond, it's easy not to worry about that.
Yeah, probably.
But so there was a real difference back then, and I think there's been a synthesis today. But at the same time, I think there's been some degree of triviality. There's an awful lot of people who buy watches just because they think they look cool, and they haven't.
Or they just
Yeah,
status.
yeah, and yeah, and And right now I work out of my home, so the last thing I care about is status, most of the time.
I work out of my home as well.
Yeah,
Same with me.
yeah.
You mentioned these free-sprung balance debates and so forth. Do you remember a memorable debate or controversies that early days that would have seemed funny today? Maybe Waldo did's Explorer view or
Uh,
anything
well,
else?
yeah, I remember the Walt's review of the Explorer very, very well, and what he would call, and he during the time he would call me and said, "They're coming after me. I got a call from a guy at Rolex," sort of thing.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was,
Can you for your audience, can you refresh everybody's memories of what that was all about?
yeah. Walt was a self-learned watchmaker. And a lot of the guys in the Switzerland said, nah, you can never learn on yourself, particularly in the United States. Um, but I remember I became very friendly then. I haven't been in touch with Jean-Claude Beaver. And he saw what Walt did. And he said, this is one of the first people who understand the Piguet movements. And he was really absolutely right. And and Walt is and was a genius in terms of that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But anyhow, he took an Explorer apart, uh, an Explorer 1, if I recall, not a 2. And
Yeah. Yeah.
he was very unimpressed with the finishing.
And he documented pictures and
Yeah.
everything, little arrows and showed everything, everybody. Like they took apart the sausage basically.
Yeah. And his premise, which I think is still correct, is that if you're paying X dollars, it's one thing. But when you're paying Rolex prices, even at those lower prices back then, nevertheless, you have a situation where you expect fine finishing.
Yeah.
Uh, and 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 frankly, my guess is that Rolex finishing was not as good as it is today. But also he had a particularly bad example. Uh,
Yeah.
it wasn't.
It was kinda crude.
Yeah, it was, but I have a feeling it just passed by inspection. You know, we think of watch companies as this automatic thing, but no, they still require a lot of handwork and a lot of inspection. And he had a dud. There's no question about it. And so my thinking here is that, and it became a scandal. And half the people said, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not qualified to know, or you made this up, or just all sorts of crazy things. Today we talk about politics and conspiratorial theories. Let me tell you, the half the audience back then had conspiratorial theories about Walt.
Thing is Walt was extremely thorough. He was very thorough, he was very detailed, he's meticulous, and his points made a lot of sense. So for
Yeah,
people to say this, you know, you don't know what you're talking about, they didn't read it properly or they didn't go through it all. And this fake news crap that we hear today, that's basically the first instance of that. And like you said, it caused such controversy. It was unbelievable. It was, for a young man at the time who had just started participating on Time Zone, I was mostly in the background at the beginning until I started writing. It was just like popcorn moments. It was just I was devouring that every
yeah.
day. It was amazing.
And it's really, I think, in part, the Swiss watch industry, which for a long time was very ingrown, uh, all the articles about them were written in magazines. Uh,
Yes, and the magazines were supported by the advertising that they were paying for.
exactly. And
I wrote for those magazines.
sure, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if the magazines were too critical, I got to tell you, it wasn't going to fly. So for the first time,
Yep.
with both Rolex and Jaeger LeCoultre, Jaeger LeCoultre to you civilians, but they were criticized publicly. Yep. And it spread. And
Yep.
and figuring out how to deal with that was very, very different. And different companies reach different approaches.
Yeah. Yeah.
But on the whole, and there were times, when I was put into a little bit of a difficult situation because there was something that IWC did that wasn't my favorite. And yet I still had to be supportive to some
Mm.
extent. And I wasn't going to lie. I was going to take Michael Sarp's dictum to heart. Uh, but nevertheless,
Yeah.
the internet opened up a whole new flood of critical analysis. And I think properly stated critical analysis is good.
100%.
Yeah.
Do you think, something was lost when forums gave way to social media?
Yes. Uh, um, I don't know how to say this nicely. There was a dumbing down. Um, I think I love social media. In fact, I'm one of my few friends that still spends time on Facebook. Uh, mo- a huge number of the people have more or less abandoned it, and for good reasons. In some ways, it's a teenage pursuit. Here I am, an old guy, but uh, but yeah, I do feel, but that's true for almost any sort of activity. That the moment, you know, if you play baseball with a good team of 9 players, you're not going to get a hugely better result if you have 90 players on your team. As you expand, you can't expand from the top. You have to expand from the bottom up. And when I was moderator, I viewed my job as trying to take those people and lift them. But it became more and more difficult with IWC. And and frankly, I had some problems with IWC at the end of my moderation, which I really haven't disclosed previously. Maybe a little bit, but what happened was somebody in Hong Kong posted some of the novelties early before the embargo date, which he was given by the, one of the IWC people in Hong Kong. And I wrote him, and this was when the forum was supposed to have first view. I wrote him and I said, you can't do this because there's an embargo. And he said, screw you, the people in Hong Kong told me I could have these pictures. I said, well, then they made a mistake. Please try to respect me. And he said, I'm going to get you if it's the last thing I do. Yeah, there were people who threatened me, some physically, but
Wow.
he then went to senior management at IWC and complained. And he also manipulated some of the other people on the forum to say things.
Wow.
And I was yes, and I was called into an office at IWC, not by George Kern, and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "This is ridiculous." I said, "This is a star chamber proceeding," is exactly what I called it. And I said, "If you're going to accuse me, I want to know specifically who said what, when, and how." And of course, they didn't. And I was going to quit that day. Just like, screw you. I don't need this. You know,
After all these years of you being the champion of IWC,
well,
they don't take your side.
well, George Kern did.
Good.
And and basically I stayed on for 2 more years through George Kern. But I realized that I had to give the dog a bone and I wasn't going to stand forever. It didn't bother me because at some point I felt that the forum was less. Part of the problem is that all these watch companies have a large turnover in personnel.
They do.
Of the people in marketing at IWC today, very few were there when I started.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, and well, I don't think anyone was today. There's a woman in South America who runs the IWC distribution. She lives in Miami. She was there when she joined when I joined, back 25 years ago. But beyond that, it's almost no one. And every time the regime changed, everyone wanted to stake their own claims.
Yeah, for sure, and it's changed a lot. I think 2 or 3 times in the space of last decade, or it's
Yes,
yeah.
yeah, and some turnover is very good, but on the whole, I view it as a situation where my situation was changing,
Uh,
and I appreciated everything George did for me. Some of the mid-level staff I have mixed feelings about. I should tell you that the way the guy talked to me in that office was not a way I hadn't talked to in over 50 years.
yeah, I wouldn't stand for that either, especially what you've committed to doing for them over all that time. That's just
Yeah, and
wholeheartedly wrong.
and they paid me well, I should say, but that wasn't, it wasn't the money thing. I
No, it's not here or then, or it's not here or that. No,
no,
just wrong.
and yeah, but it is what it is, and but basically, George Kern saved me from either quitting or getting fired.
No, good for him. My respect for him just went up a little bit.
Yeah, well, George is a very complicated guy, but he's always been fair to me. And I honestly believe also, even if we disagree on something, he's one of the smartest guys around. And I really like smart people generally. Uh, I mean, and you find them in the watch business, but George in particular, uh, he was just fortunate. You know, like some people, he was born with good brains, and
Yeah.
and
Well, you don't get to where he's at now by being a dum dum, right?
yeah, no, absolutely. So, but anyhow, what I'm saying is, as things expanded and as social media expanded, the population changed. And there weren't the early rough ages, but there was a lot of people who think very differently. And every so often, I still, when I'm on Instagram or somewhere, I write, "Why are you stating this?" You know, or "Why do you need to express yourself this way?" I just don't understand.
You said there's not so many rough edges, but there's a whole lot of dull edges.
Yes.
And I have a feeling people say comments just because they want to get noticed. It's frustrating as hell, and there's a whole lot of them. And you're not getting any quality interaction with people anymore. Social media has changed our whole little universe.
Um, Hugely. More than I even think we we recognize, and certainly not just in watchmaking or watch collecting, but in every way possible. And sometimes it's very good. Lately, I'm seeing an awful lot of fake posts and AI stuff.
Oh, too much AI stuff.
Yeah, yeah, because you'll lose reality, and when you do that, where are you? It's fun, it's cute, but so I'm not sure where we're going or how we're going to get there. So
But we're along for the ride.
yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, on the two watches I have on, uh, frankly, I heard of them both on the internet, particularly the Italian one. Uh, but but beyond that, I don't pay any attention to the social media on them. That's not my goal in life. My goal is to uh, find good things to collect. By the way, I should add that I have some really obscure collections, uh, most of which I've never disclosed because there's no need to. For example,
No, there's a need now.
well, I have a collection of trench watches from World War One.
Oh, very cool.
Uh, and with one exception, two of them are Rolex. One of them's Omega, and one of them's IWC. And the IWC one, I had one 30 years ago, 20 years ago, but I sold it. And a friend in Schaffhausen sold me his.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's a small watch,
Well, they were all small back then.
but yeah, but with the bund
Yeah.
bands that you
Yeah,
could
yeah, yeah.
buy, they look like they wear
Yeah.
larger. In fact, I thought they wear so much larger that after the trench watches, I recently bought an original Rolex Oyster
Okay.
from 1928
A
or
bubble back, I
29.
guess? Was
Pardon?
it bubble back?
No,
No. Before that?
no, the double back, the bubble back was like 1931
Okay.
with the perpetual. This was the one that Mercedes Gleitz swam across the channel
Channel,
on.
yeah. Very cool.
And it is cool, but they said it was 33 or 34 millimeters, but because the octagonal shape of the case, the watch looks so small.
Yeah.
But still, it's so I don't wear it very
It's
much. But,
charming.
yeah, I just like old things. I would have never gotten into them if it wasn't for the internet. Even so, I learned a huge amount about trench watches from guys on a trench watch forum. And you can't do that anywhere else in the world. If you said to me you wanted to learn about trench watches and you can't do it on the internet, good luck.
No, yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
So if you were building a watch community from scratch today, what would you borrow from the forum era? And would you do anything differently?
I don't know. I'd have to think about that, but a lot would depend on my goals with the watch forum, and I could have different goals. One idea would be to sell watches, and frankly, um, uh, I tried that as a way of helping Carol Bucherer. Nobody knows because I always respected their watches. I viewed them as having classic design, some interesting innovations, and priced right for what they were. And I knew several people at Bucherer, including the CEO who used to be head of public relations. This could be public. Excuse me, I was getting an email while we were talking, but so I set up a little forum, not a forum, but more like a watch of, I'd pick certain watches and highlight them, and I was trying to get discussion. I couldn't gain the traction. And even though there are a couple of places that discuss Bucherer, mine was slicker, more modern, more sophisticated, but it just didn't take off. And so, to me, the better way to do things is to do it in conjunction with other activities. I have talked from time to time with other watch companies about doing some work for them. And a lot of them kind of pigeonhole me and say, hey, ultra high net worth individuals. Help us help them learn more about our turbulence and so on. So they'll buy some. And frankly, that's not the way to go about it. These guys are sophisticated enough on their tourbillons, or if not, they don't need a forum for it. Many of the most sophisticated or least successful people don't have the time to fool around on internet forums. They're too busy trying to make $1 million or more a year. And so a lot, to answer your question, I've given you a long-winded answer, depends on what the goals are. But I believe that it's important to have impersonal goals. What I would have done if I were involved with Breitling, which I did have an invitation to do something with, but I decided it wouldn't work out for various reasons, and it had nothing to do with George. He was always a good guy, but I wanted to have a collectors meeting in Switzerland, and not for guys that they decided to invite based upon who the dealers said were their big customers, and not for a couple guys that they picked up on some internet forum. I wanted to develop a whole new body of people. And to me, it's developing the body of people and figuring out how to do it is more important. And I remember when I was talking to one of the PR people, she said, well, we have the guy in Vienna, and he's really expert. He has the biggest collection in the world of Breitling. I said, I know, but that's not my skill set, even though I'm viewed as a collector. My skill set is trying to develop a collector base. And I can do it because I'm one of them. And
And the guy who has all the biggest collection is not the guy you're trying to reach.
oh,
He's already buying these watches. He's already got all of them. You wanna try to reach the passionate people who are learning about the brand, that wanna participate, that wanna,
exactly.
yeah, that's a
And it's a different market in a different way. And I feel that the watch companies haven't exploited it well. And if I were setting up a forum today, I would work with them and try to do it. But to me, the inducements are of special availability of product,
uh,
whether it's a collector's forum watch or a preview of novelties. It's also special invitations that you couldn't get elsewhere. Like, yeah, we'll go to New York. I remember there was Panerai in 2003 had a collector's watch, first one. They invited a bunch of guys to New York for it. And but it's that sort of activity, the travel, the in-person, the thing, and it all mutually reinforces. And that's the sort of thing I would do if I could do it today. It's harder because the competition is all over the place. But I don't think anyone has done it well, and
yeah.
particularly, and I thought of even writing a book or series of articles on how internet development in the watch industry. But the problem is, I feel it's like whistling in the wind. It's
Yeah. I don't know about that. I think, I get what you mean by whistling in the wind or peeing in the wind.
yeah,
But I think there would be some appetite for that. We've had several guests such as yourself and others that I mentioned earlier that when we talked about the early days of the internet, I think they're very popular episodes where people get a glimpse as to how it was when it first started, how collecting
yeah.
online and how it's changed over the years. I think a book detailing the progression of watches on the internet would be really fascinating. I wouldn't even mind collaborating with you on that.
Well, let me
I'd
think.
love to do
Right
something
now,
like that.
I'm trying to get over a major hump in terms of work, but I'm almost there.
Yeah, no, look,
Yeah,
this is,
but
future
I'd be
project.
glad to talk to you about it, Mark, because honestly, that would help. It would also help in a different way, and that is right now. No matter what you do, there's people who are going to take shots,
Yep.
and one of the shots I have is that I don't have an MBA. uh,
Neither do I.
yeah, I know, but people will say What does he know? He's an amateur. Uh,
Yeah, I don't go with that. Look, the
yeah,
amount of time that you and I have spent researching, learning, fondling, handling, buying, selling, trading these watches, you can't learn that in school. I mean, we're talking like decades worth of research and reading, and it's daily, every day for the last 30 years that I've been doing this stuff. Like, you know, you can't, I think we're wholeheartedly overqualified to write that book. Like,
yeah. Well,
it'd be a lot of fun.
thank you for saying that. At least in my case, but yeah, maybe I should do something. I just not sure what the audience is because there's probably uh, you know, y- y- of the major watch companies, I would say usually the person is the one in charge of marketing, forgetting what the title is,
Uh,
and they constantly change. I remember I was very close to the people at Langa and Zona, and now, frankly, nobody there knows me. Uh, and so I'm not. So I'm writing to a new audience all the time, uh, and
Yeah.
and frankly, I kind of blame them. The person who came in New York should have looked and said, "Who did I send a scarf, a cashmere, long scarf to back 5 years ago, and why haven't we done anything recently?" They don't do that. No, they'll say they're too busy, and the answer is BS. No, by law office standards, they're not working hard, and I don't care what they say.
No, no. Circling back to IWC real quick here, was there ever a moment when you had to challenge IWC on behalf of collectors? Or for that matter, how much influence did collectors' feedback have on the brand's decisions? I mean, they had that captive audience.
Yes. Well, that's a difficult question, uh, uh, but the answer is in some ways yes, in other ways no. George Kern had strong views, um, and it's a little bit like if you want to get along with him, you don't fight him very much. Uh, but that's okay because his views are usually right, and you can't get anyone to bat 1,000. The main examples I can give you is the collector's watches that IWC produced. Uh, the Collector's Forum One watch, which was an engineer, was entirely my idea because Jacqueline Rose, who I mentioned, said to me, "They're coming out with a new engineer for the first time in years. It's going to be an important watch. What should we do?" I said, "Make 100 for the forum." And she said, "That's a great idea." And I was involved with the initial development of it, the marketing of it. Uh, I took some things from the Panerai 2003 distribution to use in 2005 with IWC. But when I suggested it, they didn't. Next time, not next time, but we also came up with the Collector's Forum Pilot's Watch, which to me is one of the best pilot's watches ever made by anybody at any price. And I had to twist arms left, right, and sideways to get rid of the large date aperture, the window that showed 3 dates in a semicircle.
God, I hated those.
Well, not only that, it just wasn't an authentic pilot's watch. And I wanted one that looked like an authentic pilot's watch, even if we were still in Fantasyland. And I talked to them. They said no. I talked to them again. They said no. And the third time it worked. So, and the reason they said no after on the second time was because the die for it, you had to have a new die, would be about 25,000 francs. And they didn't think the money was worth it for a small limited edition, but then they thought they could use it elsewhere. So the answer is, like any corporate setting, there's a give and take. But I was surprised at how well and how often they listened to me. And that doesn't mean I was always right or I always should be listened to, but there were people there who were very open to ideas, and it really helped. On the other hand, I should tell you, one of our audience development techniques was giving away freebies, mouse pads and things like that.
Yep. Yep.
And they would always send me a bunch of, caps, T-shirts, canvas carry-alls, just sometimes steak knives, even literally, saying, but whatever it was. And sometimes I'd have to beg, borrow, and steal to get them. Sometimes the New York office gave them to me, even though it came out of the New York budget and they were going worldwide. But in all events, I was having these big things. All you have to do is post about the following subject, and you've entered into the thing to get a thing. And I purposely did it so that 1 out of every 3 or 4 people would get something. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it was a lot of work because I'd have to go to the post office and mail the stuff myself. Everything.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah,
They
yeah, yeah.
shut it down. They shut it down because the lawyers in Geneva for Richemont thought it was like a lottery,
Oh, boy.
and and I'm a lawyer. I don't think they're right. But I said, okay, if you don't want the audience development, you won't get it. Uh,
That's unfortunate. I was very proud of my mouse pad, I'll tell you. I used it for years.
yeah, no, I still have stuff lying around,
You know what? It outlasted my IWC.
and I don't know what to do with it all because I can't use it all. I
Mm,
mean,
yeah.
I can only use so many Swiss Army knives, and I really don't like selling stuff on eBay. Stuff. But I do think developing a program to increase audience using the internet as a base, but only as a base, makes a huge amount of sense. It's worked before, and it'll work again with the right people and the right budget. And it's not a big
Yeah,
budget. It's not a big budget. I think,
and proper moderation.
yeah, but that's easy. Honestly, for $150,000, they're getting more for their ad money.
No, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. Oh, you'll get more for your ad money by getting other enthusiasts who are enthusiastic about the brand than you will creating beautiful pictures or the IWC sign on a Formula One car. It
yeah,
enthusiasm breeds enthusiasm.
yes, yeah, exactly. And I wish watch companies would still do more of it and do it more intelligently. Part of the problem is we have now a large number of indies, and
Yeah, we certainly do.
and as you can tell, I respect them, I like them, but they don't have the budget of the big boys.
No, they don't. No, they don't. And I work for one, so I work for Isotope, and as much as I'd love to have the budget, there is no budget. I mean,
Yeah, I understand.
we try to, as because, like you said, because there's so many micro brands out there, independents, margins have to be very aggressive in order to attract. We don't have the margins for retail store locations, ambassadors, pay for forums, pay for, all kinds of things. So you have to really be diligent with what you sponsor. And I think the shows now that we do all over the place, probably going to LA in July, we're going to Charlotte after that. We've got the Toronto Timepiece show, we've got Austin, Texas. Those are working, but you can't be all at all of the shows all the time. Like last weekend, I was in Montreal doing a show, and Jose, the owner of the company, was in Poland. And there were multiple brands doing these two shows at the same time. It's, something's got to give. That's
I
how
think shows that have been traditional shows are a little bit dinosaurs today. Um, uh, back in oh, mid the first decade, IWC would be at a lot of watch time shows throughout the country, and they would send me to every one.
Mhm.
Now, I did get a flight and I got a hotel, but I wasn't getting paid extra. But it was terrific because I could talk with the collectors and show them their models,
Yeah.
even with some of their staff people there, who, yeah, in some ways better than their staff, frankly.
Yep.
But the problem was, I remember once I asked a new guy who was in charge of IWC North America. Won't mention him by name, but I will say he's now in charge of Prada worldwide. And I said, "What do you think of this show?" This is his first show. And he says, "I don't like it." He says, "Because we're displaying the watches in rows like they're commodities. These are precious special objects, and they need to be presented with more elan." And at the time, I was a little, offended because of, hey, I am showing all these things but I think he was right. And I think the better shows need to move up in value. To Because otherwise, there is something to be said for democratization, but there's also something to be said for cheapening the coin of the realm.
That's well said.
And I don't view watches as commodities,
Hmm.
even though I've been very critical that people don't discuss pricing as much as they should on the internet,
Yeah,
because to me, pricing is critical to evaluating a watch.
absolutely. And pricing is gone completely out of hand, but that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, in your opinion, which IWC launch generated the biggest reaction among collectors?
Well,
Was it the big pilot?
not initially because people didn't understand it. There was no other big pilot other than the original ones from the 1940s, the Bjorn. Um, and so it took a little while for traction there. Not much, though, a couple years. Um, there's um, and they used to try to do things different every year. This would be the year of the aqua timer.
Oh, yeah, I remember those. Yeah, 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 yeah. And at Basel would have the booth would be, the year of the aqua timer. So this is submarine, and then it's a year of the pilot watch. It'd have a P-52 hanging from the ceiling or whatever. Yeah, I remember those years. Yeah.
Yeah, but they've changed that in large part because I think what happens is they need to go with their best sellers,
Mm,
and their best sellers are pilots, Portuguese, and Portofino. What they call internally the three Ps.
okay.
Uh, the problem, though, is the Portofino is a semi-budget watch.
Yeah.
Not by most people's standards, but it's the beginning of the IWC line.
Within, yeah, it's the gateway.
Yeah, yeah. And it was the one watch for years that they refused to even pay for advertising on, because they didn't need to. The second was the Portuguese, which was hugely popular, but it's gone less popular today, in large part because watches are getting a bit smaller.
And they were always quite large. Yeah.
The pocket watch tradition isn't as important as it was then, and they're meant for more complicated and expensive watches. And I don't think that's where IWC is focusing today as much. They'll disagree with me, but I'd be willing to bet that if you just looked at sales numbers, and I haven't seen any recent ones, you'll see that pilots' watches just trump everything. Sorry to use that word, uh, but it's absolutely true. So I don't think it was any one thing. I remember when the diving watches, the Cousteaus, came out. There was a huge interest in them for 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
But and so things come and go, and I think I understand that with public companies, there's constantly a need to push towards earnings and to support the stock. But the safe way to do it is to do something the same every year, or say, "Hey, we're coming out with this now in white ceramic," but which is still relatively safe.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's I can't think of any one watch that just took the world by storm, except the Collectors Forum Pilots watch. Uh, yeah.
There you go. So, what's the greatest IWC watch that never received the recognition it deserved, in your opinion?
Hmm. I'd have to think about that further. I can't think of the number right now. There was a watch done in about 150 examples in the early 80s that had a calendar and chronograph. Very classic watch. It had a Valjoux movement, and it may have been. If it was either IW's first chronograph or subject to the Porsche design, it was the first non-Porsche design chronograph. I think that watch is terribly underlooked today. You can still pick them up for, I don't know, $6,000-7,000 max in gold, and it's a bargain. I view their pocket watches, and I know you got to be nuts to own their pocket watches, but I own a lot of IWC pocket watches. I think they're terribly overlooked today. I only collect pocket watches from 1885 or earlier by IWC, but I have 6 different Paul Webers each with a different language on the dial, and which was not easy. And they're terribly overlooked because even if you spend a lot, I don't think I've ever spent more than $3,000 on a pocket watch. And I have, you know, like the 400th watch ever produced by IWC in 1870, and things like that. Um, and it wasn't taking advantage of the sellers. It was just having knowledge that no one else had. But so I do. There's particular collecting niches that exist. The other thing is the engineer used to be hugely popular. The vintage ones, 666, 866, even before the 1832. The market has dropped out on them. Ones that were $5,000 to $8,000, you can see 3 to 4 frequently.
Wow.
And strictly from, if you equate value and overlooked with price, those vintage engineers are good deals today.
There you go. Is there a piece in your collection? You mentioned the pocket watch, the 400th one. Is there a piece in your collection that means more to you emotionally than it does financially?
My wife would say no. I have my dad's original watch from 1946, a Lord Elgin. Small.
Very cool.
I won't sell it, but I don't wear it.
Well, you can't sell that.
Yeah. My wife accused me of, if it's not glued down for the right price, I'll sell anything. I tell her she's wrong, but I can't think of a good example to refute her.
I'm pretty much the same way. Every time I get a new watch, and I never buy a watch with the intention of selling it. I always buy it with the intention of wearing it, enjoying it, and I'm never able to hold on to it. So whenever I get something new, she always says, "Yeah, but how long are you going to keep it?"
I'll tell you what happened to me this week. I don't mean to interrupt, please, but
No, it's fine.
my day-to-day watch, though, even though I frequently wear the guilloche, don't laugh, is a Cartier Santos,
Okay.
the titanium one.
Okay, that's a great
It's
watch.
a fabulous watch. And
Sure.
when I bought it, I said, this one I'm never going to sell because it meets every criteria in the right way. History, modern, special design, going back to my dad, everything, mechanical. Uh, uh, and I was offered recently one of the new Universal Genève. And if you had to pay the taxes that I'm about to pay, you would say, how in the hell can you afford a Universal Genève at any price? And I thought for a minute, hey, maybe I need to sell that Chanel, sell the Cartier. I'm not going to. I thought about it. But what I mean to say is, here was my perfect everyday watch, the one I really liked, and something better came along. And what am I supposed to do? I don't have infinite money. Nobody does.
Hey, that's where I'm at. I've never, I've made a decent living for myself, a beautiful home. I have 2 kids in college, but if I want something new, something else has got to get sold. I mean, I only have so much liquidity
No, no,
to make these things
no
happen.
one does. If you ask, um, how do you start out to get a small watch collection? You start out with a large one. But
Um, so watch collectors rarely stop there. Do you collect anything else
yeah,
or enjoy any other hobbies outside of watch space?
yeah, I'm I really enjoy photography. Uh, Not as much studio photography of watches. I view it as technical and a little boring. I used to have a lot of really good photo equipment, and I was a big liker of that.
Okay.
Um, and I still have one or two nice Sonys that I don't even take on vacation anymore because I use my iPhone. Um, and but not only photography in the active sense, but even before watches, I collected fine photographs. And I have classic photographs by Cartier-Bresson and Brassai, Cortez, like that, which in many ways is parallel in time frame to what I think about watches. I'm more interested in classic photography, and I've given away about half my collection to primarily one museum. But I still have a good collection. Almost every wall is taken. Uh, and
That's cool.
and so, I like taking photographs. I like thinking about photographs. I like that generally. Uh, what else? I have a few fountain pens, but nothing special there anymore. Um, and I like automobiles, but I don't collect them. Mm, things to reassure my masculinity, going back to what I said earlier.
I think that I think it may be that today's young collectors mistake learning about watches with consuming the opinions they hear on social media. What advice would you have for people getting into the hobby about where to go and what to do simply to learn more?
Well, I hesitate to say your best contact is with a dealer, a really good dealer. Be-
There are few and far those. They're few and far between.
yes, but you can find them, or you can ask people, who do you use and why?
Yeah.
Even though he's semi-retired now and he's really not running a business, I used to love dealing with Al Armstrong at Armstrong Rockwell.
I remember him.
Sure. I still stay in touch with Al. Uh, and he's semi-retired. And yeah, he gave me some really good buys, but more than that, he had good, clear opinions. Uh,
Mm.
and similarly, Jeff Hess, not the guy at the auction house, the guy in St. Petersburg.
Old Northwest Jewelers.
Yep. He's been terrific with his knowledge for me. Now, he's busy and I can't impose on him a lot, but I will say, what do you think about this Rolex, or what's fair price, good condition? And he's always been spot on and he's always been helpful. So the answer is, it's possible to find good dealers who love and understand watches. And I think they're the first thing, because from there you can branch out to maybe know the companies, to maybe know other collectors, and things like that.
Yeah. That's not a bad recommendation. Do you remember Michael from Kenjo? Kenjo, New York? Does that ring a bell?
I know Kenjo, but the guy I used to deal with was a bicyclist. I can't think
That's
of
right,
his.
Michael. That was his
Yeah.
name.
Oh, sure.
He was working there until 9/11, and when 9/11 happened, it would happen right next to his store. He ran away from the rubble, and he got completely out after that. He moved to the Midwest and got into cycling, but he was a good fountain of knowledge as well.
Yeah. I still stay a little bit in touch with him via Facebook, believe it or not.
Wow. I should try to reach out. I haven't spoken to him in
Yeah,
25 years.
try and just have him, and occasionally, if once a year you see something interesting, it's worth it. Yeah, because he was a good guy.
He was a very good
He
guy.
has strong opinions, but that's okay too.
Yes. They sold Blanc paint at the time. Do you remember? And they had the Aqualung and the other models. I remember, this is going back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's amazing how many of the same people we know going back 30 years now.
Yeah. There's a couple old guys talking on a podcast. Hopefully someone will enjoy this. I am. So that's all that counts to me.
Understood.
So we read an interview in Watch Time India where you made the differentiation between a collector and an accumulator. It was not just a judgmental remark. Would you mind outlining for us if something you often think about when looking at your own collection?
Yeah, well, I should also mention where I got the idea, because I like to think I'm really smart, but I'm not. I learn, and and I learned that from reading on James Dowling,
Yeah.
where he talked about horizontal and vertical collections.
Okay.
Vertical, you have every engineer since inception with IWC. Horizontal, you got the same model engineer in 3 metals, or whatever.
Okay.
Uh, those are dumb examples, but there's very sophisticated ones. And it occurred to me that if one is assembling a collection and not just indulging in their taste at the moment, thinking through the criteria helps make it a collection. Otherwise, you're just randomly buying watches because you like them. And sometimes the reason you like them doesn't have to be superficial. It's not always that it has a pretty dial. It could be, I really like this brand because every one of their movements is excellent. Look at but still, it's not as, I think somebody who really thinks it through needs both horizontal and vertical. My pocket watch collection is both. As I said, I had 6 Paul Webers. I also had a whole bunch of original Jones pocket watches. I sold most of them, but I kept 4 that I'll probably never sell, going back to what you said. And similarly on lots of things. The trench watches, they're not expensive. I think the most expensive was like $2,000, and it was for a Rolex in good condition. Yeah, I see them at 4 or 5, 6, but frankly, they're just overpriced in my opinion. And so why should I sell them? I mean, if you make, as Walt Odets once said to me, if you make a nickel and double it, you're still not rich. And so, so by that same standards, I try to collect rather than accumulate. I don't always succeed. I could rationalize, for example, my Cartier Santos, but because it is a military watch of sorts, but it really doesn't fit well with the rest of my collection. But I just like it. And
Sometimes that's all it takes.
So that's collecting.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And what concerns you most about modern watch collecting now? I'll tell you for myself, is people chasing the hype and chasing the money. Like what happened with the Swatch and Swatch and AP stuff that happened a couple weeks ago. That's what's concerning me most. What about you?
Well, I am very upset about that, even though, and I've been very critical of it online. I don't know if you've seen my picture of pigs rushing into a boutique, literally pigs.
I think I did see
but,
that.
But at the same time, my 7-year-old granddaughter wants one, and I think I know somebody who's going to get it for her. Me. What bothers me most is there's little analysis of movement or mechanics. I have found in practical use that my iota movements keep time as accurately.
Yep. The 9 series. Yeah.
And with the same range or autonomy as very expensive watches. But nobody on the internet would do what Walt Odets did 20 years ago and take a Myota apart and explain exactly why it's such a good movement for the price.
Yeah, I remember the reviews we used to write 20 years ago. We'd talk about the watch like we do now, cases, materials, that stuff. But when it came to the movement, this has a glacier balance. It has the KIF shock protection. It had this, it had that. This material, it was gilt. It was in the finishing. In the paragraph or 2 paragraphs of the movement was important.
Yeah.
Now, I read a review, and the movement part is, it's this movement, has this many joules, this power reserve, and it's accurate, and then I move on to something else, because no one's reading that stuff.
Yeah, well, there's a huge superficiality now, and also that extends, in my opinion, to pricing.
Mm-hmm.
I think many prices by some companies are inappropriate. In a free market sense, no. They can get whatever the market bears.
Yeah.
But I view them as acting in opportunistic faith.
1000%.
But nobody calls them out.
I have on this podcast, right? But who the hell am I? I'm just a schmuck sitting behind a microphone.
And that's true for me too, because I'll say something on Instagram, but there's not a lot of you know, steel longas or titanium longas. Ridiculous. Uh,
Yeah, well, all the stuff that's happening with all the APs and all the I mean, you remember the days when those watches weren't being sold. They had so much inventory they couldn't sell them. They begged people to buy a Nautilus. Now, your
I
watches.
will not buy an AP. I will not buy a longa, and I will not buy certain other brands because if they treat me, major collector, poorly, imagine how they got to treat the guy on the street.
Yeah.
And and I'm not saying I deserve special treatment, but I'm saying I so rebel from that today. And I think that it's the internet that puts up with that stuff because
The internet doesn't just put up, it amplifies it,
mhm,
celebrates it, and it's created this artificial bullshit, pardon my
no,
French. It's terrible.
exactly. And in the long run, it's going to hurt, but I can't figure out when it's going to happen and how.
Every time I think it's gonna start going back the other way, it doesn't. It just keeps on climbing, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah, I know. Somebody said to me this week that they thought within the next 2 years you will see a decline in the number of indies.
Oh, indies, yes. I think a lot of that's definitely gonna happen. That's definitely gonna happen.
I don't, I don't think it's going to be that much because if I only produce, say, 100 watches, and I only spend no uh, $500 to have them manufactured, and I'm selling them for 1,200, which I think a lot of companies are. You know, the risk is $50,000, and they're going to sell something, and they're going to scrap or redo others. So for a $10,000 or $15,000 net risk, it's easy to stay in the game, and I think that's why so many of the indies have boomed because it doesn't take much.
I think there's an issue with availability, movement availability, supply chain issues. I think you're still on track for a cleansing next couple of years, I think. Not a wholesale huge amount, but there's gonna be brands that are gonna
Yeah,
disappear. That's just the way it
and
is.
and frankly, I don't like to see anyone who cares about what they do lose. But it's part of the name of the game, and it's not going to affect me. It's not going to affect my collection.
Uh,
Uh, I'm about to have my remaining photograph collection appraised. And frankly, the market for classic photographs in the past 5 or 10 years has been flat as more conceptual, large color images.
yeah.
But so what? Yeah. So I haven't made as much as I could. At some point, it's just greed. I, I can, I can feed my family. I can go on vacation. Life is good. So I'm not worried about the industry generally, even though I would like them to do better because I like watches and I like watches to do better.
So let's flip this around and touch some good news here. What excites you most about modern watch collecting right now?
The well, the contrary of what I just said, the breadth of choice, the ability to choose and come very close to what you would do if you almost designed your own watch.
Pretty much.
Uh, yeah, and not exactly, but that's okay too. Um, the Venezia Cano, when I has a guilloche dial, I would have never thought of getting a watch like that 10 years ago. But the fact is, you could have one, and it's just it's something that wouldn't have existed but for the breadth of what watchmaking is offering today. And some of it shows to me a lot of ingenuity. Given there's only so many variations on a theme and only so many shapes you can do, in theory, they're pretty clever.
Absolutely.
A lot of guys are.
Absolutely. A lot of good designs
Yeah.
out there. A lot of imagination. Swing it back to IWC real quick. Do you think, and you mentioned the engineer before, do you think that the modern engineer has lived up to expectations?
Um, I like IWC. If one would give me a steel blue dial engineer. I would take it and wear it gladly. Um, but I think the pricing is a little high.
A little.
Uh, uh, I thought of the gold one, which may sound strange. And I figured, why the hell would I buy a gold engineer when I can buy a gold submariner for less?
Yeah, and those are available.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And and so I think that there is some pricing issue, number one. Number two, um, I rebel from cuteness. Uh, Cute dials, pretty colors. Not that I mind them, but and you know my uh, Jaeger and Benzinger has a copper dial. So it's not that I'm just saying it's got to be monochromatic, but what I do think is that some of the colors and some of the dials uh, are going. Just like on the pilot's watches, I really rebel against the ceramics in all the colors. I think a pilot in World War II would turn over in his grave. Um, and but that doesn't mean that they're not pretty watches. It doesn't mean that a lot of people don't like wearing white watches now. This seems to be not just IWC. So my feeling of the new engineer is it's good, but it's not what it used to be. And I think polls have said that. There's been people who say, do you like the vintage 1832 engineer jumbo, or do you like the new ones? I don't think there's any vote on that. It's just 100% vintage. And it's not bad, but I think IWC can even do better.
I agree. I think that's where it should be. IWC could have done better. That's it. It's a great
Yeah,
watch. It's pretty.
yeah,
It's overpriced. I agree. But I
yeah.
think they could have done better. And I think when they stopped making the integrated bracelet versions of that watch and made
Mm.
a simple round case, their timing was so awful because the
Yeah.
market became so popular that they had to reverse course and try to artificially make it look like they never stopped making it. And it's just I don't know. IWC. We talked about the marketing before and some decisions they made. Well, those are some decisions I think.
I forget the price of the new gold engineer, but I think it's like 42,000 US roughly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If they even did it without a bracelet, we could have done it at 32,000. And if they were just a little bit more aggressive on pricing, maybe even 29.9.
Yeah,
And I'm not saying it because I want to buy it cheap. I'm saying it because then people who come in for the steel one can be upsold
yeah,
or
yeah.
or something. And
And it's not like they're not making money at 29.9.
no, no, but then they should figure out why they're not making money. I'll tell you, when Swatch came out with an automatic chronograph about 20 years ago for the first time, IWC bought some to take them apart and figure out how they could do it so inexpensively.
Yeah.
And I wish there were more cost studies, and there may be, and I just haven't seen them
Mm.
on production. Because what I would do is figure out how I could produce the best product at the best price point to sell.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. I think that should be done.
Yeah.
A resetting of the market. That would be smart. So which historical IWC model deserves a faithful reissue, in your opinion?
Uh,
Should the GST come back? I think a lot of people would like that.
yeah. GST. There are various watches with 2 time zones, and some there. See, what I would do is I would have a classic engineer like an 866, but with 2 time zones.
Or that GG Lecoultre Mecha Quartz movement in it. That would be cool.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and oh, so I honestly think that the Portuguese are as been cheapened by producing too much of the same thing without thinking it through more creatively. And it's not, well, we have a bigger watch, so we can put a more complicated movement in it. That's not the point.
Peloton winding and all that happy stuff.
Yeah. And there are dials in some of the vintage ones that I think people would die for today. Some of the 1941s with chapter rings that are different colors and things like that. And they don't, I think part of the problem today is they think that they have to produce at least 1,000 or something to make any money. And I think even that's a mistake, because I could set up a little atelier within the company and produce for a lot less.
Wouldn't it be cool if they reissued a Calibrate 89 or something?
Yes, but the market today for hand wound watches is limited, much more so than when I started collecting.
Yeah, but that's a beloved movement. I like the Caliber 321 from Omega. They did a reissue, all handmade. All.
Yeah,
What if they took their most popular hand wound, simple three-hand watch, two-hand watch even, and just made that again? I think that would. Look, I got goosebumps just thinking about it. I think that would be really, really cool.
I agree with you, and I think Omega is doing some fabulous things right now. I forgot there's one watch they just came out with. I forget the name of it, but it's brand new, and they had one in Hungary, I think. It was in Budapest, and I saw, maybe it was, no, it was Prague again, but it was, very expensive. Gold today is particularly expensive, and
Yeah,
it's a real problem for, I think, a lot of companies.
Omega has a pricing issue just like IWC does.
Yeah, yeah. But I think Omega's doing some very interesting things, and I think they have a little more guts. And I think maybe they're able to twist the arms of their dealers better in terms of buying.
Yeah. All right. So that's basically most of the questions. I got a little rapid fire round for you,
Okay.
real quick. Yes,
Yeah,
no's, or just quick answers. So let's go. Here we go. Mark 11 or Big Pilot?
11.
That bracelet. That's such a great watch. Engineer or GST?
Engineer.
Vintage or modern?
Vintage.
One IWC for the rest of your life.
El Destriero Scafusa.
Oh boy. The grand complication, right?
Yeah.
That's nuts.
And I had one on it once, back when I first started with
Wow.
IWC, and I showed it to my wife, and online. She was back here, and and her response was run.
Yeah. I'm gonna mortgage the house.
Yeah.
Most overrated IWC.
Wow. That I'd have to think about. I'm not sure. I think several are somewhat overrated, but many are still slightly undiscovered. I think,
Oh, how about that? Most underrated IWC then? One that's undiscovered that you think should get light.
well, the GST. I also think, I hate to say this because people will kick me under the table and say, that's not true. Aquatimers have not been big sellers.
No.
And I think some of them can be very big sellers if they were redone with additional features.
Agreed.
Or slightly different. Because I think that a lot of the DNA is there, both historical and otherwise.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think they got a little sucked into, let's do it too colorful.
Too colorful, too big. Let's get, winding the bezel, inner bezel from the outside, all that kind of crazy stuff. It needs to be stripped down to its essentials. And, the GST was a phenomenal watch. I loved the old Porsche design Ocean 2000s, and those ones were so nice.
And they were priced right at the point. And
they're priced right, and they weren't super thick. 2,000-meter water resistant. It was like 14 or 13 millimeters thick. Gorgeous watch.
Well, and it goes to show that ETA movements sell. And I don't see, I used to think things wrong with that, but I don't. I can see like almost two divisions of IWC.
Yeah.
Today. I remember once asking George Kern, would he ever consider a watch with a plastic case? And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, like some companies give out loaners when you bring your watch
Yeah.
in for the repair." And he basically said, "Not on my dead body." But I do think having almost two lines makes some sense.
Absolutely.
Oh, but some companies haven't done well with it. Bowman Mercier tried it and didn't do well at all.
Yeah. Best IWC movement.
Um, I don't know, Caliber 89 or some of the automatic movements. Al- Almost any of the 85s are really good. And I think probably the creme de la creme is the 8541.
There you go. Favorite non-IWC brand.
Ah, well, I really like Rolex, but primarily because of its rich history. It shaped the industry. It's classic, and they're durable and they're well made, notwithstanding Waldo death.
Yep.
Um, but there's several brands that I like. To me, it's like a beautiful woman's last name. That's the least thing I need to worry about. Yeah, yeah.
One watch you wish you had never sold.
Oh boy, many, 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 many. Um, well, I had a original vintage engineer that was military issued.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and a test watch for German Bund. I don't think it was put in service. It was just sold to the Bund. Um, and that was a very stupid sale. Um, but with hindsight, almost everything that I sold, I wish I didn't sell. But like you, I can't have everything, and so I'm constantly shuffling the deck.
If I kept every single watch that I've owned,
Hmm.
I wouldn't have a house. I wouldn't have a wife. I wouldn't have kids. I wouldn't have any cars. I probably have no clothes. I just bought a lot of watches.
Yeah, me too. And on top of that, it's even bad with the I can't wear them all, the ones I have.
Yeah, that too. And I have a disease. I wear usually the latest one I got or my favorite the most. Everything else just and it kills me that I have all that money sitting in a box. And I try wearing them, but I always go back to my latest or my favorite.
Well, one of my latest, yeah, no, me too. And one of the problems then is if I have an expensive watch sitting in the cabinet, out it goes. If you said to me, uh, oh, yeah, I had some other watches. For example, I had a steel anti-magnetic Patek.
Oh wow.
I think I bought it for around $10,000, $12,000. I think I sold it for around 15, and I think today I get at least 80 on it.
Oh yeah, probably. Oh, yeah, yeah. 100%.
So I regret that in a sense, but also the way I feel today is I don't like very expensive watches sitting on a shelf. It,
Yeah. I'm the same way.
yeah, yeah.
I'm the same way. And one watch you wish you had bought.
Hmm,
The one that got away.
that's tough. One of the more recent ones is I was offered. You may not even know this watch because it didn't take off as super super popular. Jaeger LeCoultre came up with a steel perpetual watch with a blue dial about 2 or 3 years ago.
Is it Polaris line?
Yes.
Oh, I know the watch. It's gorgeous.
And I like steel watches generally. And I was talking when it was introduced to the boutique in Geneva, and they offered me the first one for sale in the world because they could get it. And they called me on Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning and said, "We got it in. Do you want it? We can't ship it."
Obviously.
And I said, "I don't know how you're going to get it to me. I'm at the airport, Zurich." And we ran out of time and I never got it.
Oh, wow.
And, and then today, it's about $10,000 more.
Of course.
You know, yeah,
That's unfortunate.
2 or 3 years. But that's a watch. That's one that got away that I wish didn't.
Wow. So I got one last question for you. You've watched the hobby evolve from mail order catalogs and early forums to social media and podcasts.
Mhm.
What do you hope watch collecting looks like 20 years from now?
Well, I think there should be uh, 2 groups, although they can overlap. One is what I would call the old core group of classic watches. By that I mean Vacheron and Audemars and the 10 or 15 watches.
Breguet and all those guys, yeah.
And I think there's a place for every one of these with collectors. They're great watches with great history. I wish some of them weren't as expensive, but you can find good buys. And occasionally, it really doesn't matter. My when I bought my Cartier Santos, I called up a boutique and said, "Can you get it for me?" And they said, "Sure." And I don't mind paying full freight either. I'm not a bargain hunter in itself. But one would be the finer watch brands. The second would be the independents. And I think for the independents, people have to have broad views on them and try and figure out something that they're trying to deal with in terms of just buying. Because I think with a little more focus, it'll be better.
Yeah.
And I think with those two things, and I would love for, as I say, for a watch company to do both.
Yeah.
But most haven't succeeded doing that or don't have the guts to try because they're afraid that a cheap line will cheapen the coin of the realm.
And then AP does the swatch thing. So
Well, it's what you get when you hire somebody who did hairsprays at Procter and Gamble to run your company.
that's the best
I'm
line.
sorry, but that's true.
Yeah, yeah.
That's absolute.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Michael, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Is at underscore Michael.Friedberg underscore the best place to find you on Instagram and follow you?
Yeah, that's the only place on Instagram.
Okay.
And if I have any other, I'll send you everything I do because we should stay, Mark, much more in touch than we do.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And let's talk about that book thing. I think that
Yeah,
would be a lot
yeah.
of fun.
It wouldn't be hard to do something, or at least do a series of articles, if I can find a journal or something, because I think some watch companies could learn from us.
My podcast partner has a pretty popular media blog called The Calibrated Wrist.
Yeah.
And if you want to combine and work on some articles together, I can have it published there 100%.
Okay. Well, I was thinking of something that will catch the attention of the watch companies big time.
Yeah, agreed. That'd be fun.
Yeah, and one of the problems I have with podcasts generally, even though yes, they're the future, is they take more time than reading. And
I found, and I'm a avid podcast listener.
Yeah,
I have them in the car as I'm driving to work, or if I'm doing dishes, or if I'm mowing the lawn. Like I listen, I consume information, and it's not just watches.
I know.
And I think that long form podcast, like what we've just done, we're going almost 2 hours here. People get to know you
Yes.
and get to know what we're about by listening to these longer form type interviews than the half hour, 45-minute blurb about what you're trying to sell.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, in my opinion, the better format. Of course, I'm biased, but that's what I think it is.
Let's see what the reactions are to all the negative things I've said.
Nah, people are going to love it. Honestly, I think I loved it. I think this is one of the best podcasts we put together so far.
Well, thank you.
So is there anything you want to plug in the meantime?
No, I have no agenda other than, may watches always live long, long live the king,
There you go. Well, thanks again, Michael, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you. Take care.
The Time to Calibrate podcast is a bi-weekly show and is available wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a question or a comment? Email us at timetocalibrate@gmail.com, or you can find us on Instagram at timetocalibrate. If you haven't given us a follow or a review yet, please do so. This helps platforms recommend us to like-minded listeners. You can also follow us individually on Instagram. I'm at Marc Time to Watch. Bob is at Time to Go 1978, and Brent is at Caliber 321. Also, be sure to check out Bob's Time to Go Travel and Timepieces YouTube channel, and be sure to visit thecalibratedwrist.com for all your watch-related news, editorials, and reviews. Lastly, if you like our show, do tell a friend. Heck, tell lots of friends. We'd greatly appreciate it. That's it for now. T2C out.